Boxing is a pretty brutal sport, and UFC is one step further. Fighting in it is tough and can easily get rough, but that's the kind of brutality you sign up for. The UFC world has a dirty, dirty secret. It's not that the idea isn't familiar to most fans. It's what the fighters have to go through that concerns us. Some fighters almost die or get severely injured, as Khabib and Uriah did. Let's dive into the darker side of UFC. First up, what's weight cutting? And how is it involved in UFC? Cutting weight is a common practice in the UFC. Most consider it to be easy, simple, and healthy. Just go into a calorie deficit diet and exercise. That's it, right? For people like us, yeah, it's just basic dieting and more physical movements. But that's not the case for professional fighters. In the UFC process, fighters are weighed a week before the fight. Getting on the weight scale for the world is daunting to most of us, but the fighters do it for a different reason. They have to weigh a certain amount before their fight. Missing the weight or not matching it can get them punished, or even get the match canceled. Next, how do fighters cut weight? Unlike normal people, these fighters are constantly monitoring everything they eat, and their training is super intensive. MMA is heavily reliant on surviving through the fight. For that, the fighters have to train and do a ton of cardio. So they're at a healthy weight, but for the weigh-ins, they have no choice but to take it to the extreme. The process includes dehydration. The fighters will typically dehydrate themselves to lose water weight. The fighters cut around 10 to 30 pounds this way, and as every weigh-in approaches, they have to gear up to do it all over again. Dehydrate, reach the required weight, rehydrate to the normal weight, and level, and then fight. Paige VanZant fought in the women's strawweight division. She came out to say that the fight required a weight of 115 pounds. To achieve that, she cut 23 pounds in just 10 days. Most of that was through dehydration. Before any one of you thinks that you can try it too, beware of the side effects. The process could very much kill you. Moving on, what happened to Khabib Nurmagomedov and Uriah Hall? Popular Science wrote that 39% of fighters are still dehydrated when they fight. You may think that's not a big enough deal, but this affects not just their performance, but their health. A fight will end, but this weight cutting can do long-term bodily damage. Khabib Nurmagomedov is one of the more popular fighters, and he opened up to talkSport about the issues he faced before his fight with Conor McGregor. The Russian is no stranger to issues because of weight cuts, but before his big match, he shared that he suffered seizures because of weight cutting. He claimed that nobody knew at the time, and he only shared this after the fight was done. Apparently, he couldn't in the first place. Why? Because if he lost, it would be used as an excuse and not seen as an urgent issue in the sport. Khabib said that it was his psychological strength that got him through the torture of weight cut and allowed him to score a win against McGregor. Another fighter faced similar, if not worse, effects. Uriah Hall pulled out of a fight in 2018 after he suffered more major side effects of weight cutting. Hall later explained that he was conscious but also unconscious. He felt like it was a mini seizure and heart attack combined in one. That definitely can't feel good. His kidneys weren't good at all either. In fact, his doctor told him that had he still insisted on fighting, he could have died because his body was in a horrible state. Both fighters are doing well right now and survived numerous weight cuts, but not everyone gets out of it okay. Following that, losing fighters because of weight cutting. The UFC is a pretty big stage for fighters. Reaching that point alone takes a bunch of strength and resilience. So the fighters make sacrifices and will do anything to become the next big thing. But for Steve Montgomery, it wasn't meant to be. Like Khabib and Uriah, Montgomery was preparing for a fight. According to Fox Sports, he had a horrible seizure that forced him to be hospitalized. The complications from weight cutting were too much for him, and he had to be removed from the show. The UFC needs to learn before they face the same fate as ONE FC. One of UFC's biggest competitors is the Asian MMA organization. A fighter lost his life to strict weight cutting rules. A couple of weeks after the death, the organization shifted around some rules, and the players now don't face face critical health issues. After that, we have Joe Rogan coming out against weight cutting. Joe Rogan is a popular UFC commentator and even has his podcast called The Joe Rogan Experience. So he's no ordinary guy giving out opinions. He has unusual views on things, and one of the things he strongly opposes is weight cutting in combat sports. He claims that it's legalized cheating. It kind of makes sense because think about it. The fighter's original weight is unknown. They dehydrate to a fixed weight, but then return to their normal one. Rogan thinks that this way, they're pretending to be lighter than they are. If the weight is not met, the fighters are forced to withdraw from bouts. And if the weight is met, they go on to fight in a cage aggressively, having suffered through weakness and serious health issues. He pointed out that ONE FC conducts a hydration test that keeps its fighters safe from any health issues, and the system allows them to be at the weight they need to be. The slight flexibility in weight saves lives. Now moving on to other related news that might interest you. Starting with Khamzat Chimaev having weight cut issues. Chimaev's fight with Nate Diaz was highly anticipated. The top-ranked welterweight contender couldn't hit the weight limit of 170 pounds. At the official weigh-in, he tipped the scale at 178.5 pounds. This forced him out of his highly anticipated bout with Diaz. They had to reshuffle the top 3 fights on the card, and now Chimaev is facing Kevin Holland in a co-main event matchup. Dana White came on Instagram Live to explain that Chimaev was very lean already and should have hit the weight, but when he started weight cutting, he started locking up and cramping. His doctor advised him to not keep weight cutting, or he'd face horrible consequences. It seems that White didn't consider Chimaev's issues before immediately booking him for another fight, but he did speak about the bad blood between Holland and Chimaev, which would make the bout fortuitous. They had a mini squabble backstage at UFC 279's press conference. According to the Russian's coach, Holland got hit with a boot on his chest. White confirmed it and said that now, ironically, both of them will fight it out in the cage. And they did. Next up, Conor McGregor believes that more fighters will copy Chimaev. Even though Chimaev couldn't cut weight anymore, he was placed in a fight with Holland, who weighed in at 179.5. The Russian was told to stop cutting weight 10 hours before the weigh-in. Chimaev remains unbeaten, having won against 11 professional opponents so far. But now he's facing a more appropriate opponent in the interim lightweight, Tony Ferguson. McGregor came in to say that Chimaev shouldn't have been given any sort of chance at a rematch. Instead, the fighter should have been removed, as he showed wildly overweight for his first pay-per-view main event. He thinks that the undefeated athlete should have been removed from the card altogether. Giving Chimaev a better bout after he failed to cut was a mistake, according to him. He should be sent back home to starve. Maybe McGregor is taking it a wee bit too far. McGregor usually tweets just to delete, but this thought of his earned some positive replies. There was general support for his statement, as Chimaev's weight miss was incredibly high. The unbeaten number 3 ranked welterweight came on the scale with pride. So rumors started spreading that this was done on purpose, while McGregor hated the smirk on his face. Chimaev did joke on the scales as he weighed in relatively early and flipped his middle finger at the reporters. He even posted a photoshopped image aggravating fans. Last, we have the result of the match on Saturday's card. Khamzat Chimaev has been the top fighter and most feared contender for UFC 279, and he did his job brilliantly on Saturday. The athlete took down Kevin Holland almost immediately after the fight began and forced a tap with a Darce choke in the first round of the co-main event at 213. On the other hand, Chimaev's original opponent, Nate Diaz, put on a vintage performance for his last match, per his contract and agency. Diaz submitted Tony Ferguson with a guillotine choke at 252 of the 4th round. He said he needs a break from UFC, but might return later. Meanwhile, he'll take up another sport and plans on dominating it. That's a wrap for this video. Does weight cutting sit right with you? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos. See you at the next one.